LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the July 26th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. This week, I've picked out the 10 best, most newsworthy clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows on the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News. Well, no NBC, I'll get to that in a second, but that's the so-called corporate media here in the United States for what should be a really educational, fair use media criticism and political commentary show for you all tonight. Meet the Press, preempted by soccer. They say if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press, but it's Sunday and no Meet the Press. Enough said. If you want to see my clip list, my notes I use for myself, for the 10 clips, there's a link down in the video description. Source of all the clips is down there. Also my topic description, which is this week, vote them out in 100 days, because today is exactly 100 days from the November 3rd election, with 100 days to go. And after months of President Donald Trump's poor, dishonest person, woman, man, camera, TV response to the COVID-19 crisis, the Trump administration is trying to change its tone now. Several of Trump's minions went out on the Sunday morning news analysis shows. I have clips from Steve Mnuchin, Meadows, and Larry Kudlow, but Trump's poor leadership combined this week with the poor leadership from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, so that the American people, their relief from, for the coronavirus crisis and the economic crisis that came from the health crisis, no relief for the American people. It's all running out, as you'll see covered in the news and newsmaker clips. And then I will also have a discussion, sort of a Nancy Pelosi versus Ted Cruz clip at the end, or two clips at the end, before, of course, the bonus Dash and Sandy clip. But first, for my political comedy clip, I have to show you that clip that took over the internet for the last several days. It's the Dr. Mark Siegel interviewing President Donald Trump for the Fox News program Tucker Carlson Tonight, giving the infamous person, woman, man, camera, TV response. And now, the one thing that I didn't see anyone point out about this clip, despite all the coverage that it got, is at the very beginning, I'm going to show you pretty much the full person, woman, man, camera, TV clip. And right at the beginning, Trump talks about the test, can't remember the name of the test, even though that's not 5 words, it's 3 words. It's the MOCA test, which stands for the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test. Montreal Cognitive Assessment. That's 3 words. That's 2 words less than person, woman, man, camera, TV. But anyway, I'll discuss all of that a little more after we watch that infamous political comedy clip from Fox News, prime time, I think it was Wednesday night, over here.
Took a test. I said to the doctor, it was Dr. Ronnie Jackson, I said, is there some kind of a test, an acuity test? And he said there actually is, and he named it, whatever it might be. And it was 30 or 35 questions. The first questions are very easy. The last questions are much more difficult. Like a memory question, it's like you'll go person, woman, man, camera, TV. So they say, could you repeat that? So I said, yeah. So it's person, woman, man, camera, TV. Okay, that's very good. If you get it in order, you get extra points. Okay, now he's asking you other questions, and then 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes later, they say, remember the first question? Not the first, but the 10th question? Give us that again. Can you do that again? And you go person, woman, man, camera, TV. If you get it in order, you get extra points. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy. And that's not an easy question. In other words, they ask it to you, they give you 5 names and you have to repeat them, and that's okay. If you repeat them out of order, it's okay, but it's not as good. But then when you go back about 20, 25 minutes later and they say, go back to that question, they don't tell you this, go back to that question and repeat them. Can you do it? And you go, person, woman, man, camera, TV. They say, that's amazing. How did you do that? I do it because I have like a good memory, because I'm cognitively there.
I don't know, do people who are cognitively there ever say, I'm cognitively there? Like do stable geniuses ever say they're stable geniuses? It's amazing that clip didn't make it onto any of the Sunday morning news shows, but I guess it did get played over and over again in many different outlets. I assume many of you have already seen it, though maybe not that full measure of the clip. And like I said before, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, those 3 words that Trump couldn't remember, if you Google it, he also exaggerated how long they wait till they ask you to say the 5 words again. It's like 5 minutes. He says like 15, 20 minutes. And also, if you watch the whole interview, there's a link down in the video description, by the way, to the entire 23-minute interview on the Fox News website. I think he says that he got the test from Ronnie Jackson like 6 months ago, and it was like 2 years ago. So there are all sorts of memory problems in his clip bragging about his great memory. But I couldn't not show that. In fact, I almost, instead of titling the video this week, Vote Them Out in 100 Days. See, I couldn't even remember the name of title of my own video. I actually almost titled it Person, Woman, Man, Camera, TV. Person, Woman, Camera, Man, TV. I think that might have been the best title for the week, but you can let me know down in the comment section if that would have been a better title. But now I want to get to the actual news summaries and newsmaker clips. I have 4 news summaries. Like I said, there's no Meet the Press, but I do have at least brief news summaries from all the rest of them. I think everybody except for only George Stephanopoulos resisted the urge to say 100 days till the election, since today, Sunday, is 100 days till the election. I think George Stephanopoulos said something like home stretch to the election, and they all pretty much covered something about coronavirus. Fox News has the longest, I always say Meet the Press has the best and longest news summary. Fox News has the longest and worst news summary, as I'll explain when I get to that 4th clip. But first I'm going to start off with State of the Union, CNN State of the Union, Jake Tapper, starting off saying that the State of the Union this week is sick and tired, and also facing the consequences of sick and tired of facing consequences and facing a choice. No, sorry. Can't even read my own notes. Sick and tired, and then also facing a consequential choice in 100 days. It talks about the number of cases, the number of deaths, the economic emergency, and what I especially like about Jake Tapper's news summary is there is an evil picture of Mitch McConnell that I like so much I put it in the thumbnail for my video, which I will discuss a little more with you after we watch that 96-second news summary from CNN this morning over here.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the state of our union is sick and tired and facing a consequential choice. Today marks exactly 100 days until the next presidential election, and the nation is deeply mired in crisis. There are currently more than 4.1 million coronavirus cases in the U.S. and more than 146,000 Americans dead. More than a dozen states hit daily records this week, and the nation's daily death toll topped 1,000 multiple times. All this as millions of Americans are facing an increasingly urgent economic emergency as the extra $600 in unemployment benefits runs out this week. And the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, says more relief is 2 to 3 weeks away, quote, hopefully. This morning, we're getting fresh insight from CNN as to how voters are thinking about the election in 3 key battleground states that could decide the winner, Florida, Arizona, and Michigan. In all 3, former Vice President Joe Biden is leading 51% to 46% in Florida, 49% to 45% in Arizona, and 52% to 40% in Michigan. We should note these are polls of registered voters, not likely voters, and the margin of error is 3.8%. This morning, we're going to talk to leaders facing these crises from different perspectives. 2 members of the president's administration, the chair of the Republican Governors Association, a leading member of Congress and a potential vice presidential Biden running mate, and the mayor of one of America's largest cities. But let's begin with a member of the coronavirus task force, the man leading the U.S. testing effort.
Admiral Giroir there Jake Tapper does a really good cross-examination interview of Admiral Giroir. I won't have a clip from that because he's not quite a minion. I have the Larry Kudlow minion clip coming up, clip number 7 later, which is also a good cross-examination. But he cross-examines Admiral Giroir on the inadequacy of U.S. testing really well. Down at the link in the video description, you can click on CNN State of the Union. I think watch the whole program yourself, or watch just that interview maybe. But like I said, Jake Tapper did have the evil picture of Mitch McConnell and talked about how Mitch McConnell is putting this off for weeks. And ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos also talked about those same polls. Did you see those polls there? I mean, it's 100 days to the election. There's still time for a lot of things to change. I saw one of the people on a pundit panel mentioned that at this point, 100 days before the election, which election were they talking? Oh yeah, Mike Dukakis was like 16, 18 points ahead, and Mike Dukakis did not become president. So it's not impossible for things to change, although Mike Dukakis wasn't the president that killed 140,000 Americans so far. Or, I mean, I guess not every death is his fault, but many of those deaths could have been prevented with better leadership, with not the poor, dishonest leadership that we've seen from Donald Trump. So you saw those polls there, Florida, Michigan, Arizona, all going for Biden. If that happens, of course, I mean, right now it looks like Trump is going to suffer one of the worst landslide defeats in American history. But so much could change, and there's a lot of wiggle room in the polls. No one should get complacent. That's for sure. But those same polls come up with George Stephanopoulos at the end of his news summary here. The thing I like about this is the way he says many days of the week when talking about how the death rate has gone up to 1,000 Americans dying a day from COVID-19. And I will talk about that a little more after we watch this shorter news summary from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos this morning over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. On this Sunday, as we celebrate a civil rights legend and hit the home stretch toward Election Day, the country is still in the grip of the coronavirus that has transformed our society, ravaged our economy, upended our politics, and, most tragic of all, cost so many lives, at least 145,000 in the U.S. This week, more than 1,000 Americans died on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 5 days straight for the first time since May. And as the caseloads continue to climb, the president's poll numbers continue to fall, now trailing Joe Biden by more than 8 points, behind in all the key battleground states, with 100 days before the final votes are cast. Which means our first guest has his work cut out for him. We want to welcome Mark Meadows for his first Sunday interview as White House Chief of Staff. Mr. Meadows, thank you.
And that Mark Meadows guy is totally odious. Odious, you know, he used to be a member of Congress, Freedom Caucus. I think he was from North Carolina. He was like a total partisan tool, and becoming Donald Trump's chief of staff has not made him less of a tool. I'll show you a clip of George Stephanopoulos cross-examining Mark Meadows. That's clip number 8 coming up. But this next news summary, the third and second to last news summary, is from CBS's Face the Nation. And it's the shortest news summary, but I wanted to put it right before the Fox News summary because it makes a point in its 40 seconds or 41 seconds that you don't get in the whole Fox News summary, although you do get right after, which I'll talk about when I get to the Fox News summary. But here's Margaret Brennan talking about the 100 days till the election, and things look pretty damn bleak. Well, she doesn't say damn, but things look pretty bleak over in this clip.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. 100 days from the election, the country faces a bleak outlook. Over the past 5 days, the coronavirus killed more than 1,000 Americans a day, the highest number since late May. Millions of Americans are also wondering how to make ends meet. Congress allowed a $600 boost to unemployment insurance and a federal ban on evictions to expire. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said it may take weeks to reach a deal, as Republicans have not yet presented an alternative to the $3 trillion rescue package that House Democrats already passed. We begin this morning with Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
And Nancy Pelosi's clip number 9. I seem to be like previewing each of the newsmaker clips. That's clips 9 and 10 are Nancy Pelosi versus Ted Cruz at the end, sort of like the congressional talking points. But you notice, speaking of congressional talking points, that even in that very brief news summary from Margaret Brennan, she talked about how Mitch McConnell's evil, poor leadership, basically they like bought into Donald Trump's talking points back in May that this was all going to go away, and things seem to be, even they said April 15th or April was going to be the peak, and then things started to seem to get better, and so Mitch McConnell, he just wants to, make the Senate is just like, all it does is like a judge confirming factory, and he doesn't want it to do anything else or spend any other money, or basically that is his deal. Is just like a judge confirming factory, and he got the big tax cut for the rich that you'll see Nancy Pelosi talk about later. So Mitch McConnell never came up with the fourth CARES Act 2 or the HEROES Act is what Nancy Pelosi and the House passed 2 months ago. 2 months, 10 days ago, they passed it. And maybe Monday, the Senate's going to come up with their bill. And they're still fighting about it. And Mitch McConnell says a few more weeks, even though, as was briefly mentioned there, the eviction moratorium already expired. The unemployment insurance boost is going to expire this week. And you'll see, they talk about all the details of what possibly might be in this next bill in the Fox News summary you're about to see. But David Spunt never mentions how the Democrats passed their bill two months and 10 days ago, and the Republicans are still fighting about it. There are a couple little criticisms of Trump in this news summary. But then there's this weird thing that often happens on Fox News Sunday where they'll have the news summary and they leave out like one of the most important facts. And then when Chris Wallace gets to his newsmaker interview right after that, he brings it up. So if it was so important to like cross-examine, here it's going to be cross-examining Steve Mnuchin, why didn't they bring it up in the news summary? In fact, I'm going to let this play because all the way through Chris Wallace's first question, because the question he asks is one of the big things missing in this news summary. Let's see, was there anything? Well, I pretty much pre-criticized it. If there's anything else, I'll talk about it after we watch the final news summary from Fox News Sunday this morning over here.
Hello again from Fox News in Washington. In 100 days, Americans head to the polls amid a pandemic and economic uncertainty. The numbers tell a grim story. This week, the U.S. surpassed 4 million cases and nears 150,000 dead. And 1.4 million Americans filed for first-time unemployment benefits. In a moment, we'll talk with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin about when the White House and Congress will agree on a new relief plan to keep the U.S. economy afloat. But first, David Spunt is traveling with President Trump in Bridgewater, New Jersey, with the latest on those negotiations. David.
Hi, Chris. The president spent his weekend here in New Jersey meeting with friends and supporters, but his economic team stayed in Washington working to make a deal.
Oh, I'm going to restart that news summary. I forgot to tell you, first of all, there's some weird problem where when David Spunt goes to his package, it doesn't, that's what you were just seeing there. You'll see there's like 10 minutes of silence where they sort of keep looping the same pictures moving around. But you notice how he talked about, Trump was meeting with friends and advisors in New Jersey, but his team was hard at work in D.C. They're kind of covering up for the fact that Trump played golf with Brett Favre. There was even a picture of him playing golf for once, and so he's out playing golf when there's like 1,000 cases day after day of people dying from COVID-19, 1,000 deaths for 5 days, as you saw George Stephanopoulos mention earlier. So anyway, and I wanted to mention that. I guess I am totally pre-criticizing the clip now. And I forgot to mention that there's going to be this weird lack of sound for 10 seconds. Not my fault. Fox News Sunday did it. As I will talk about with you a little more after we watch the whole clip together again over here.
Hello again from Fox News in Washington. In 100 days, Americans head to the polls amid a pandemic and economic uncertainty. The numbers tell a grim story. This week, the U.S. surpassed 4 million cases and nears 150,000 dead. And 1.4 million Americans filed for first-time unemployment benefits. In a moment, we'll talk with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin about when the White House and Congress will agree on a new relief plan to keep the U.S. economy afloat. But first, David Spunt is traveling with President Trump in Bridgewater, New Jersey, with the latest on those negotiations. David.
Hi, Chris. The president spent his weekend here in New Jersey meeting with friends and supporters, but his economic team stayed in Washington working to make a deal.
Pass the bill and
This weekend, a gut punch for millions of out-of-work Americans as their last $600 weekly pandemic unemployment benefit checks went out.
pass the bill and get the checks out there to the people who really need it.
White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin spent Saturday in talks. Senate Republicans reportedly want unemployment checks to drop to $200 a week, along with $16 billion for COVID testing and $105 billion for schools. Democrats want benefits to stay at $600 a week, while including rental and mortgage assistance.
What are we doing here if we are not addressing the needs of people who have lost their jobs through no fault of their own?
The president pushed for a payroll tax cut, but Democrats and some Republicans nixed it. The deadlock comes as the president canceled his RNC acceptance speech planned for next month in Florida, a reversal from 6 weeks ago when the speech was moved to Florida because North Carolina officials said no to a big crowd.
I'll still do a convention speech in a different form.
And overnight, more unrest in cities. In Seattle, authorities declaring a riot, arrested more than 24 people. Police in neighboring Portland, Oregon, are preparing to mark 60 straight nights of unrest. As for the COVID relief money, the clock is ticking as millions of Americans grow anxious and the August recess looms. Chris.
David Spunt reporting from Bridgewater, New Jersey. David, thank you. And joining us now, Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin. Mr. Secretary, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
House Democrats passed their relief bill back in May, fully 2 months ago. But here we are, the last week in July, and the White House and Senate Republicans still can't agree on just a GOP package. Meanwhile, a federal ban on evictions ran out yesterday. Federal unemployment benefits run out on Friday, and the last checks have already gone out. And the payroll protection program for businesses is running out early next month. Here's Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer.
They have been so divided, so disorganized, so unprepared that they have struggled to even draft a partisan proposal within their own conference. They can't come together.
Won't millions of Americans and millions of businesses pay the price because the White House and Senate Republicans can't get your act together?
Well, Chris, first let me say I think.
And that's a good question. And another good question is why, like I said before I showed the clip, why did none of those facts, why, the Chuck Schumer clip, all the thing, David Spunt in his news summary briefly referenced that things were running out and Americans were worried that, with the August recess looming, but nothing about how Democrats passed their bill in the House 2 months ago and Senate Republicans still haven't decided amongst themselves what they support. Why wasn't that in the news summary and Fox News? And I think we all know the reason, especially if you've read this book over here, The Loudest Voice in the Room, that Fox News was created to be a propaganda arm of the Republican Party. And then the one other thing in there is, they did talk about COVID-19, not as strongly and in dire terms as some of the other news summaries, and it seemed almost like they gave more coverage to unrest in the cities than to, and how that was hurting people just when COVID-19 is killing 1,000 people every day. So what's that about? And it's especially disturbing if you watch Fox News during the week like I do. Like, even their news programs, top of the hour, it's unrest in the cities, unrest in the cities. Like, that is the main news story that they're using. Chaos, like scary brown and black people are going to come and destroy your property. That's, you got to go vote for Trump, get out to the polls, because you especially people in the suburbs need to be scared. And I'm not really covering the, secret police, the paramilitary, federal so-called police officers. I covered that a bunch last week. I'll talk about it a little bit when I show the Mark Meadows clip coming up, clip number 8. But before I get to that, I want to show Steve Mnuchin trying to answer that good question that Chris Wallace asked him. I want to replay the question because it's really important to see exactly what's running out and the facts. He said a full 2 months ago the House passed the bill, but it's actually 2 months, 10 days ago, as you'll see Nancy Pelosi say in clip number 9 coming up. But there you'll see an answer from Steve Mnuchin and then another answer after the follow-up. But what I like about his original answer is he seems to think that the best way to get around how Republicans spent months doing nothing is now to say the word quickly as many times as possible in his answer. I think is it 4? Try to count the number of times Steve Mnuchin says quickly in like the first part of his answer to Chris Wallace over here.
House Democrats passed their relief bill back in May, fully 2 months ago. But here we are, the last week in July, and the White House and Senate Republicans still can't agree on just a GOP package. Meanwhile, a federal ban on evictions ran out yesterday. Federal unemployment benefits run out on Friday, and the last checks have already gone out. And the payroll protection program for businesses is running out early next month. Here's Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer.
They have been so divided, so disorganized, so unprepared that they have struggled to even draft a partisan proposal within their own conference. They can't come together.
Won't millions of Americans and millions of businesses pay the price because the White House and Senate Republicans can't get your act together?
Well, Chris, first let me say I think that's an unfair characterization. The administration and the Senate Republicans are completely on the same page. Mark Meadows and I were up yesterday just working on technical issues in the drafts. We had previously agreed on all these issues earlier in the week. We want to move forward quickly. The bill will be introduced Monday, and we're prepared to act quickly. This is all about kids and jobs. This is our focus, and we want to make sure something gets passed quickly so that we deal with the unemployment and all the other issues, paycheck protection plan, tax credits to rehire people, and money for schools.
But Mr. Secretary, the plan was supposed to be announced on Wednesday, then Thursday. Now it's next week. And it's 2 months after the Democrats came up with their plan. And now you're going to have to start negotiating with Democrats now that you have a Republican plan. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said Friday, hopefully we can come together behind some package we can agree on in the next few weeks. And here's White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows.
We're trying to make sure that we hit the immediate needs first and then continue to negotiate perhaps throughout most of August until we get something finished.
So do you have a GOP plan that will be announced tomorrow? And then what are laid off workers and what are struggling businesses supposed to do while you spend, as the White House Chief of Staff just said, until sometime in August negotiating with Democrats?
Well, let me first say we do have an entire plan. It's $1 trillion. And let me just remind everybody that of the $3 trillion we've already passed, we have about $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion still left to put into the economy. So these are very, very large amounts of money, working with Congress to support this. And what Mark Meadows was saying is that within the $1 trillion package, there are certain things that have timeframes that are a bigger priority. So we could look at doing an entire deal. We could also look at doing parts. So obviously the most pressing issues are the fact that we have unemployment insurance running out. We need to make sure that we don't have frivolous lawsuits for schools and universities. We want to make sure with the expiring unemployment insurance, we have the technical fix so people don't get paid more to stay home than they do to work. And we can move very quickly with the Democrats on these issues. We've moved quickly before, and I see no reason why we can't move quickly again. And if there are issues that take longer, we'll deal with those as well.
But Mr. Secretary, you know, because Nancy Pelosi has made it very clear, she's not going to agree to a piecemeal plan, because the things that you want immediately are the things that you want, and there are things they want, and they're not going to agree to some things until everything is agreed to. Let's focus, if we can, specifically on the unemployment benefits, because that seems to be the big holdup, certainly.
And if you want to see the whole interview and the whole thing about the unemployment benefits, where, you know, and I'm going to do unemployment benefits in the next clip where Jake Tapper cross-examines Larry Kudlow on that issue. But I guess, well, at least in the first part there, Steve Mnuchin only said the word quickly 3 times, although I did see in the comments section screw it there, posted 3 times in 10 seconds. I didn't do the actual calculations myself there. And then as I was listening at the very end there, he threw in a couple extra quicklies. So maybe that's why I thought there were 4 or 5 quicklies, because there were some more quicklies there at the end. So you can't fault me for exaggerating the quicklies. I don't think too much, but you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. And like I said, I thought that was good cross-examination by Chris Wallace on the issue of how the Republicans did not act quickly, however many times Steve Mnuchin wants to say it. And they're still, like, maybe they say Monday there's going to be the Republican plan, the Republicans are going to come together, although not to hear Ted Cruz talk about it. That's the 10th and final news clip before the bonus Dash and Sandy clip. And one of the sticking points is this idea that Republicans have that if, you know, some people are making more staying at home, the restaurants can't get the busboys and the waitresses to come back because they're making too much money on unemployment. Well, I think one of the things I draw from that is that maybe waitresses and busboys are underpaid. Maybe you could offer them a little more money, especially when you're asking them to come back and, put their bodies, their lives on the line to serve people food. You know, they're like frontline workers in the coronavirus epidemic. That's probably a stronger disincentive to coming back to work, as you'll see some of the cross-examination. And one of the things I like about Jake Tapper's cross-examination multiple times here, there's about halfway through this clip, or about 2 minutes into this clip, and then near the end, they're literal, you know how people say SMH, shaking my head? There's literal SMH moments here from Jake Tapper, and at some point in this interview, Larry Kudlow can't see Jake Tapper's numbers, so I don't think he can see Jake Tapper, so the whole shaking his head thing's lost on Larry Kudlow. But anyway, the Republican position is ridiculous, and the more important part about it isn't just that people aren't coming back to work because of safety. I mean, there's apparently like 20% of businesses have said that they can't get their workers to come back because of the unemployment benefits they're getting. But the other thing is that we're in this really precarious economic position, and the money that you give to the extra $600 in unemployment benefits not only helps those people, but it gives them money to spend. It stops them from not being able to pay their rent. It lets them be able to, like, consume goods, which keeps the economy going, which apparently when the GDP numbers come out this week, I think one estimate said the GDP dropped 1/3. Instead of, it's supposed to go up like 1 or 2%. Instead, it went down like 33% in the second quarter. Anyway, and that's all kind of brought up in this. This is the longest clip, the clip of the week. Jake Tapper, like I said, he did a good cross-examination of Admiral Giroir on testing that I didn't take a clip from, but I saved it all for this 6-minute cross-examination of Larry Kudlow, who is one of the most fatuous. I mean, I said Mark Meadows was a tool, but Larry Kudlow is so often wrong. He was like telling people to, everything was great right before the big 2008 crash. I mean, often wrong Kudlow is trying to make us feel optimistic again. Remember, like back at the beginning of the COVID-19 epidemic when he said it was contained, well, almost completely contained or almost entirely contained, and like almost contained is not contained, as we all, that was the comment I made at the time. And anyway, I will comment on his clip this week with Jake Tapper's great cross-examination. I think Jake Tapper, sometimes I think he's the best cross-examiner, and like I said, especially the SMH moments that I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch that 6-minute clip together from CNN's State of the Union this morning together over here.
I want to talk about the recovery package.
I just want to say it publicly. Okay.
Yeah, Republicans want to end the $600 per week in additional unemployment. They want to replace it with 70% of previous wages. That loss of income for millions of Americans could lead to evictions. It could lead to people not being able to pay for food or medicine or electricity. Are you concerned that changing this, the way that this unemployment compensation is given, that stopping this funding will actually end up causing further damage to the economy, with people not able to pay their bills, with people being evicted?
Jake, it won't stop. It won't stop the assistance. It's going to cap the assistance at a level that is consistent with people going back to work. That's what we've said from day one. First of all, state unemployment benefits stay in place. Second of all, we will try to cap the benefits at about 70% of wages. A University of Chicago study showed virtually 70%, 68% of people actually have higher benefits than wages. We have had a flood of inquiries and phone calls and complaints that small stores and businesses and restaurants can't hire people back. They went too far. Maybe last March it was necessary for that, but really the consequences of people not returning to work, Secretary Mnuchin said it right, we want to pay folks to go back to work. And incidentally, we are going to have, on top of the cap of wages, 70%, which is quite generous by any standard. On top of that, we will have a re-employment bonus and a retention tax credit bonus for going back to work. So that's going to more than offset any of this. I mean, the trick here is going back to work. We don't want people out. We want them in wherever possible. The businesses are calling them back. That's why I'm optimistic on the economy. So far, I could be wrong, Jake, Lord knows, but so far, this, the iteration here, the dynamic here is very positive.
People want to go back to work. The problem is that it's, in many cases, you talk about restaurants, it's not safe for them to go back to work because the administration and states have not been able to get the virus under control. I mean, that's the reason, that's the problem why restaurants can't hire workers. It's not because waiters and servers and maitre d's and bartenders don't want to go back to work. It's because either they're not allowed to open their bars or have significant seating in their restaurants, or it's not safe to go there. That's the whole problem. That's going to be the problem with schools in the fall. It's the problem with people reluctant to get on airplanes. I mean, it's because you were not able to get the virus under control that the economy continues to struggle.
I will say again, the economy is improving by leaps and bounds. I will also say there are more states that are reopening and doing very well. There are some key states, yes, California and Texas and Florida right now, that are having hotspot difficulties, but it's nothing like it was last winter. I don't agree with your premise that people won't go back to work. I think Safety matters. Let me make that very clear. And the 4 guidelines, right? The masking and the distancing particularly. Okay, you're right. But I will say this, it's a more optimistic picture than the one you are painting. And I think that we've made great strides. I mean, federal government doesn't control this. We are leaders, hopefully, in encouraging people to be safe and secure and accept our guidelines. The states are in charge of this. Each state has a different story. Most of the states are doing rather well in this. So I'm not that pessimistic. Maybe I'm too optimistic. I'm happy to report Ambassador Deborah Birx, who is our leader on the health virus task force, she's reporting now that these bad hotspot states, the 3 or 4 of them, are actually showing early signs of plateauing. Let us hope and pray that that is the case. We are doing everything we can.
We've had 4 days of more than 1,000 deaths. Yeah, I mean,
yes, the fatality rate is.
I always hope.
Any death is a tragedy. Any death is a tragedy, Jake. I agree. But it is also true.
I'll say
it is also true that the fatality rate is much slower than it was. Don't forget, in the package,
because thank God, doctors and nurses and health professionals. The doctors and nurses and health professionals are figuring out good ways to treat the virus. A lot of the people who are infected now are younger, and so it's not as high a mortality rate.
But
let me just say, sir,
but don't forget,
you paint a very rosy picture of what it looks like, what the virus looks like.
I just want to add, Jake, we're talking about employment benefits and so forth. Don't forget, there's a $1,200 check coming. That is going to be part of the new package. I would have preferred a payroll tax cut on top of that check, but be that as it may, politically it doesn't work. But the check is there, the reemployment bonus is there, the retention bonus is there. There'll be breaks for small tax credits for small businesses and restaurants. That's all going to be there. It's a very well-rounded package. It's a very well-targeted package.
Thank you.
And I think it's going to provide a great safety net until we get strong recovery, and try to be optimistic, Jake. It behooves all of us.
People need that money as soon as possible. People are worried about being evicted in days, literally in days. Mr. Kudlow, thank you so much for your time. And by the way,
we will lengthen the eviction. We will lengthen. All right. Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it.
The eviction moratorium. Okay, well, that's good news. Let's get straight to a leading House Democrat for a response. Joining me now, the chief.
So there is news there at the end there about lengthening the eviction moratorium. That would be good news. I think I saw multiple news reports that 1 in 4. Well, first I thought it said 1 in 4 Americans had missed a housing payment, like mortgage payment or rental payment, in the last month because of COVID-19. But it was actually that had missed or were worried they were going to miss. But so. That's good news, even though, I don't know, it's going to be at least a few weeks before Congress, and especially the Republicans in Congress, get their act together and pass this. So I don't know how many people, usually people can't be evicted in less than 30 days. So maybe that will save them, but it certainly will cause a lot of anxiety. And I think I pretty much pre-criticized that clip. And if you were watching, as I said, there were multiple literal SMH Jake Tapper using the shake my head movement as a media, as a cable news anchor critical tool for an administration official. I don't know how often you see that, but I thought it was well used there. And one thing I forgot to mention is that there's Larry Kudlow uses that weird platitude that Trump always uses when they talk about the number of deaths, like any death is a tragedy, when, like Jake Tapper is saying, 1,000 deaths a day. So like if any death is a tragedy, that means 1,000 deaths is 1,000 tragedies. That's what someone should say. So then 1,000 deaths is 1,000 tragedies, right? Right? Nobody ever points that out. But anyway, that was the last of my clips, specifically talking about this bogus Republican delay on the 4th coronavirus relief package, how Democrats passed it. Well, I will have Nancy Pelosi and Ted Cruz arguing about that in the last 2 clips. But before I get to that, I have one more Trump administration minion here. This is Mark Meadows, who talked about those same issues with George Stephanopoulos, but I wanted to show this one answer here because it refers to the President Donald Trump interview on Fox News Sunday last week that I showed 4 really meaty clips from, and I talked about a lot, but there was one really scary clip that I didn't show, and so I wanted to show this ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos clip because George Stephanopoulos uses that clip to question Trump's new chief of staff, Mark Meadows, this, like I said, partisan tool who used to be a Freedom Caucus, North Carolina member of Congress, and now is still a partisan tool working for the Trump administration, I guess, because how many chiefs of staff has he gone through? But like I said, in this clip here, Mark Meadows is being asked about this really scary thing that Trump said about not accepting the result of the election. And I was talking about that kind of in conjunction with these new federal police force, paramilitary forces that are going into various cities, and Trump, Portland and Kansas City and now Chicago, with some assent from the mayor. And Trump is threatening to roll them out to all these liberal Democrat-run cities that have run amok, especially if you're watching Fox News every day. If you watch Fox News every day, there's unprecedented unrest in the cities, and we have to clamp down. We have, be scared, be very scared, as I was talking about earlier. So Mark Meadows is asked not so much about the paramilitary troops that, like I said, I would briefly talk about here when I showed the Mark Meadows clip, but Mark Meadows is talking about mail-in ballots and not accepting the results of the election. And my one criticism of George Stephanopoulos is he lets Mark Meadows talk about mail-in ballots and whether there's a history of fraud, and he nails him down on that pretty well, but not so much on not accepting the result of the election, which is actually the real scary part, which I will talk about with you maybe a little more after we watch that Mark Meadows interview clip from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos this morning over here.
Weeks to come.
I want to look ahead to the election. The president continues to warn that it's going to be rigged, that's his word, by mail-in ballots, even though there's no compelling evidence that mail-in ballots are tied to widespread voter fraud. Here he was with Chris Wallace.
I think mail-in voting is going to rig the election. I really do.
Are you suggesting that you might not accept the results of the election?
I have to see. Look.
Can you give a direct answer? You will accept the election?
I have to see. Look, I have to see.
Why does the president keep questioning the election, and why won't he say clearly, as every president has done before, that he'll accept the results?
Well, George, you talked earlier about no compelling evidence of any voter fraud as it relates to mail-in ballots. I would have to disagree with that.
I said widespread voter fraud.
Okay, widespread. Well, here's the thing is we haven't had widespread mail-in ballots. The Democrats see this as their panacea of being able to put a ballot in every mailbox and hope for the best. Listen, that's not the way that the voter integrity process needs to run, where you send a ballot to everybody. Absentee ballots, the request for absentee ballots is certainly something that's happened in a number of states. It's certainly something the president supports. But as we look at that, we want to make sure that every vote counts, but that it's only one vote per person. You can't have ballot harvesting. We've seen ballot harvesting schemes in California, and I'm not suggesting that there is widespread fraud there.
Yeah,
but there certainly is fraud. But there certainly is fraud. And so for us, to be intellectually honest, we need to make sure that we have that. Yeah.
Let me press you on that, because it's not just Democrats raising the questions. Tom Ridge, former Republican governor of New Jersey, former Homeland Security Secretary under President Bush, George W. Bush, has said there's no history of widespread voter fraud. And he wonders, when you listen to the president, you begin to wonder, is he worried about the legitimacy of the electoral process, or is he worried about losing? Your response to
to my knowledge, Tom hadn't been involved in any voter integrity project since perhaps he left over a decade ago. And so I don't know that that's an informed decision as much as it is an opinion. And everybody can come on TV and provide their opinion. What we do know is a number of times as we have mail-in ballots, if there is not a chain of custody that goes from the voter to the ballot box, mischief can happen. And we've seen that throughout our history, we also see very clearly that if you're going to cast a ballot, you want to make sure it goes in the ballot box and it's your vote that counts, not your vote for someone else that gets decided by another person.
The intelligence community also put out a stark.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just, I was trying to remember the name of the governor of New Mexico, and I remembered it was Michelle Lujan, and I couldn't remember the last, Michelle Lujan Grisham. That was the name I was missing, because Michelle Lujan Grisham was on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos later, and I don't have a clip from that, but did a really good job of additionally destroying the argument you just heard there from Mark Meadows. I mean, I think George Stephanopoulos, like I said before I showed the clip, did a good job cross-examining him on the lack of widespread voter fraud using mail-in ballots, although not so much, like I said before I showed the clip, on the idea that Trump is preparing the United States electorate for him not accepting the results of the election. I mean, the guy won the 2016 election and still didn't accept the results, like claimed there was widespread fraud because he lost the popular vote. So what's going to happen this time, I don't know. So he didn't cross-examine him on that. But one thing that the governor of New Mexico, Michelle Lujan Grisham, pointed out is, if you were really worried about voter fraud, why not go to like the places where they have voting machines that are susceptible to hacking? There are a lot of places where that could be tightened up. There are a lot of places where there's no paper receipts, no trail where you can be sure that your vote got counted where the way you thought it should be counted. I mean, there are all sorts of places that are susceptible to fraud, but the place that Trump, what happened is in 2018 here in California, we had all these mail-in ballots, and it looked like Republicans were going to win several seats in California, but because there were so many mail-in ballots, the results were delayed. That's one thing about mail-in ballots we have to be prepared for November 3rd, is it means you probably don't get to find out who the winner is on the night of the election, because if there's a high proportion of mail-in ballots, you have to wait a few days for them to come in the mail, and then you have to count them. And so you're not going to know the night of the election who won. It's going to take a while to count. And when that happened in 2018, and votes kept going up and up for the Democrats, and when Republicans who looked like they won then lost, I think Trump got this idea that mail-in ballots were evil. That's why he lost all these seats in California and lost the House he was not supposed to lose, or whatever. But it's bogus. But like I said, the governor of New Mexico pointed out that it's also highly political, because it's pointed at this one thing that Trump doesn't like, that isn't really the part of voting that is most susceptible to fraud. So anyway, that is the last of the Trump minions. But I do have the Nancy Pelosi versus Ted Cruz battle coming up. They both have Nancy Pelosi has about 4.5 minutes. Ted Cruz about 4 minutes on CBS News' Face the Nation. Before I get to those clips, I also wanted to thank my Super Chat contributors so far. Let me show that screen capture here. I think I pointed out in the past, I appreciate all those comments. Some of those were pretty funny, so I appreciate the people who support my weekly videos financially through those contributions. Also down at links in the video description, you can support me on Patreon. There's a join button down there you can press, or there's also a link down there to PayPal for direct contributions at various levels. You can even get me to send you this weatherproof vinyl #LiberalViewer sticker. And then at a higher level, you can also get this ACLU United States Constitution that I sometimes refer to. So look for that down in the video description if that interests you. And I appreciate those live viewers supporting my, what is this week? It's week number 379. More than 7 years if you're having problems doing the math. So that's every Sunday. I spend 8 or 10 hours watching these shows, capturing and processing the clips, and then broadcasting those clips along with my media criticism and political commentary to you. If you like that and want me to keep doing that, those are the ways you can financially support that use of my time every Sunday for over 7 years. And now I want to get to the Nancy Pelosi versus Ted Cruz talking points. This is why I think that not only is Trump going to lose, hopefully, in the landslide I talked about earlier, but the Democrats are going to have both the House and the Senate. This is sort of congressional talking points, Nancy Pelosi versus Ted Cruz, on how they're trying to help the American people. And you'll see Nancy Pelosi talking to Margaret Brennan here about, like I said, 2 months, 10 days ago is when the House was trying to help the American people with all the stuff that's running out, the eviction moratorium, the unemployment benefits, everything that I talked about earlier. And I think Nancy Pelosi, well, does so much of a better job than Ted Cruz, but I will start with Nancy Pelosi here and talk about it a little more after we watch that clip from CBS News' Face the Nation together over here.
The Treasury Secretary said this morning that Republicans will introduce a bill on Monday. When do you expect to begin negotiating?
Well, we've been anxious to negotiate for 2 months and 10 days when we put forth our proposal that does 3 things. Honors our heroes by supporting state and local government with the healthcare workers, food suppliers, teachers, transportation workers, sanitation workers, and the rest. Secondly, that opens up our economy by having testing, tracing, treatment, and distancing to end this virus. And third, to put money in the pockets of the American people, unemployment benefits, direct payments, etc. These are things that the Republicans have voted for in previous COVID packages, so it was nothing new. It was more because more was needed. And then for them to come now when we're right on the brink, when people are hungry in our country, children, millions of children are food insecure. Many families who never thought they'd go to a food bank are going to food banks, and we need more money for food stamps and emergency nutrition programs, and they're resisting that. And again, that they would now be trying to, they're in disarray, and that delay is causing suffering for America's families. So we have been ready for 2 months and 10 days. I've been here all weekend hoping they had something to give us. They promised it this week. It didn't come. Now they're saying Monday.
Will you stay in session until a deal is negotiated?
We can't go home without it. But it's so sad that people should have this uncertainty in their lives. At the same time as they are bolstering the stock market, and that's not a bad thing, but trillions of dollars from the Fed, et cetera, to bolster the stock market, let's have a commensurate amount of money to bolster America's working families.
Specifically on what has just expired, that boost of $600 to federal unemployment, Republicans and the White House are saying that they want to keep some money going, but bring it down to about 70% of prior wages. Is that something you can accept?
Well, let me just say this. The reason we had $600 was its simplicity. Right. And figuring out 70% of somebody's wages, people don't all make a salary. Maybe they do. They make wages, and they sometimes have it vary. So why don't we just keep it simple? Unemployment benefits and the enhancement, which is so essential right now. And that's really where we are starting.
So a flat amount is what you're...
It's so important to the American people.
So
60%, over 60% of the American people support that.
No, I understand the difficulty for states to adjust their systems to process this, but would you accept a flat amount? something less than $600 as a boost? Is there a compromise
Let me
here?
just say, I'm not going to have with all due respect to you, Margaret, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some values that we have that apparently they don't share. We'll have our negotiation. But these are the same people who gave the only thing they have accomplished in the Trump administration on their own, the only thing they accomplished was a tax cut for the wealthiest people in America. The cost of $2 trillion to the national debt in order to give 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. And they're resenting $600 for single moms to be able to put food on the table, for dads to maintain the dignity of keeping their families intact, and with unemployment insurance, with assistance for rent, with food. This is an emergency. Maybe they don't understand. I don't know what they have against working families in America.
Well,
they would keep this going so long.
Well, I appreciate you not saying you don't want to negotiate in public, but for everyday Americans who are waiting on this money, the amount matters. I know the argument being that this is a cliff and that people were paid to stay home. Now they don't need to be paid to stay home. So I'm just wondering for you, because the last time we spoke, on the heels of the HEROES Act being passed back in May, you said to me at that time, we have no red lines. Has that changed? Is this a red line for you?
That was in reference to what you said about the liability, et cetera.
I see.
But in fact, you don't go into a negotiation with a red line, but you do go in with your values.
And at that point, Nancy Pelosi starts recapitulating her talking point you heard earlier about, they're spent trillions of dollars bolstering the stock market, which is true. If you've been watching the stock market, it's at all-time highs, and it's because the Fed is buying up all these corporate bonds. Corporate bonds are basically the way that corporations can get people to lend them money. You buy the bond and then they pay you back the amount you bought the bond for with interest. That's a loan to the corporation. And so the federal government is buying up all this corporate debt. That's why the stock market is at such all-time highs, and Nancy Pelosi's right to point that out. I think she had really, I saw in the comment section, the live comments, a lot of nasty things about Nancy Pelosi. She hasn't always been my favorite Democrat. She's a left-winger from San Francisco, and she's part of the sort of dinosaur establishment, I guess. But I think someone said she's better than McConnell, and of course she has done many, if you think back to Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, she did a great job getting together the votes to pass that in the House, and she's she is going to go down in history as a great strategist, a great Speaker of the House twice now. She's gone from Speaker of the House to leading the minority in the House, and then back to Speaker of the House. And like I said, I think those congressional talking points you just heard, despite all those criticisms of Nancy Pelosi I saw in the live comments, are so much better than the weak talking points you're about to hear from Ted Cruz. The one other thing I wanted to say, Margaret Brennan in that last clip kept cross-examining, or her cross-examination questions of Nancy Pelosi were the classic journalist misstep, I think, where they try to get politicians to negotiate against themselves when they're really supposed to be negotiating with the other, partisan side. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats passed their bill with extending the $600 unemployment benefit. They passed that, as Nancy Pelosi said, 2 months and 10 days ago. Republicans haven't even gotten together themselves on what their counteroffer is, and Margaret Brennan is trying to get her to lower her offer before the Republicans have even made a counteroffer. That would be so stupid. Why even? I don't know why journalists try to get politicians to lower their offers when they're in negotiations with other politicians who haven't made counteroffers. But anyway, that's my criticism of Margaret Brennan in that clip. But I think she let Ted Cruz cruise all over himself. I don't know. The one good thing about this Ted Cruz Ted Cruz, I guess, is coming to face the nation from some kind of webcam, and the best thing I can say about it is it's low resolution. For those of you who don't like to look at Ted Cruz, it's a low resolution Ted Cruz, so it might make it easier to endure. And like I said, Ted Cruz is one of those Republicans who is still hasn't signed on to Mitch McConnell's bogus counteroffer yet. One of the reasons the Republicans maybe are going to make a counteroffer tomorrow, Monday, but still haven't even come up with like the Republican plan yet. And Ted Cruz is one of the holdouts. Maybe he won't even agree with the Republican plan that McConnell comes up with, but it's ridiculous. The partisan talking points here are so divorced from reality, so much worse than what you just heard from Nancy Pelosi, in my opinion. But you can let me know what you think in the comment section as we watch this final news clip together of the night over here.
I do want to ask you about the business at hand, which, as we know from the White House and from Leader McConnell's office, is this bill they plan to introduce tomorrow to provide another round of aid. You opposed it earlier this week. Are you on board now?
I am not. Well, we have right now two simultaneous national crises. We have a global pandemic. It is serious. It has taken the lives of over 600,000 people. We need to do significantly more to fight the disease. At the same time, we have an absolute economic catastrophe. We have over 44 million Americans have lost their job, and we have got to get America back to work. Unfortunately, I just listened to your interview with Speaker Pelosi. Her objectives are focused on neither of those. Her objectives are shoveling cash at the problem and shutting America down. And in particular, you look at the $3 trillion bill she's trying to push. It's just shoveling money to her friends and not actually solving the problem. Our objective should be Americans want to get back to work. They want to be able to provide for their family. They want to be hopeful for the future. And unfortunately, Margaret, I think we're seeing Democrats, we're seeing Democratic governors, we're seeing Democratic mayors.
But what specifically? Because in terms of the unemployment benefits, do you object to providing any kind or any amount of federal boost to unemployment at this point? Because not everyone is choosing to be out of work.
The policy that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are pushing adds an additional $600 a week of federal money to unemployment. We have the unemployment system, a system
and McConnell wants to take it down to 70% of prior wages.
The problem is, for 68% of people receiving it right now, they are being paid more on unemployment than they made in their job. And I'll tell you, I've spoken to small business owners all over the state of Texas who are trying to reopen, and they're calling their waiters and waitresses, they're calling their busboys, and they won't come back. And of course they won't come back because the federal government is paying them, in some instances, twice as much money to stay home.
But you're open to a lesser amount?
Look, what we ought to focus on, instead of just shoveling trillions out the door, we ought to be passing a recovery bill. Now, what's a recovery bill? A recovery bill would be lifting the taxes and the regulations that are hammering small businesses so that people can go back to work. A recovery bill would suspend the payroll tax, which would give a pay raise to everyone in America who's working. That actually gets people back to work.
Well, the Treasury Secretary said this morning that you could have 5, 6, 7 other bills coming along that include things like a payroll tax. But this time, unemployment in particular is something that he said needs to be extended. And according to our latest CBS poll, it's very popular. 74% of Republicans approve more stimulus and added benefits. 92% of Democrats, 82% of independents. So Republicans do have the burden of governing right now. Why aren't you on board with this?
I am on board with restarting the economy. What Democrats want to do, we're 100 days out from the presidential election. The only objective Democrats have is to defeat Donald Trump. And they've cynically decided the best way to defeat Donald Trump is shut down every business in America, shut down every school in America. You know, Nancy Pelosi talks about working men and women. What she's proposing is keeping working men and women from working. And, you know, ironically, what she does have in her bill, she has a big tax cut for millionaires and billionaires in blue states.
I just want to quickly get you on. I'm sorry. I just want to quickly get you on China because I'm running out of time here. I know you.
So I guess that was a good use of polls in the cross-examination of Ted Cruz, but I don't know what Margaret Brennan's obsession with like the number that I mean, I guess that is kind of newsworthy. If she could get, well, Ted Cruz is like against the McConnell compromise anyway, so getting him to change his number, I don't even know why that's important. And I already criticized Margaret Brennan for trying to get Nancy Pelosi to negotiate against herself in the previous clip. But you saw like Ted Cruz use that same weird talking point that Jake Tapper didn't let Larry Kudlow get away with about, you know, waitresses and waiters and busboys won't come back to work because they have such cushy lives with the extra $600 staying at home for the month. And Jake Tapper said, well, you know, maybe they're not coming back because they're scared of the coronavirus that you said was, well, he didn't say, you said was contained back in March and it wasn't, but, you know, that they're scared of coronavirus. Margaret Brennan didn't even bring that up when Ted Cruz said, you know, waitresses and waiters and busboys aren't coming back to work because they're making more staying at home. But anyway, that's the last of the news clips. I appreciate all of you who showed up to watch those clips with me, and I read a lot of the live comments along the way, and especially appreciate the super chat contribution. I saw like one extra sinful solutions contribution for having to listen to Ted Cruz, so I'm sorry, like I said, but you have to agree with me, Ted Cruz was pretty low resolution there. And then finally, before I finish up the show, I did promise a bonus Dash and Sandy clip. Actually, I believe my hand, you don't often see my hand appear in a Dash and Sandy clip, but I got this Dash and Sandy clip when I was feeding Sandy this morning. I like to show how Sandy the dog goes and eats, and Dash the cat, who is over there. I was trying to get Dash over so I could lift him up, but he's like over there, won't come over. But anyway, Dash the cat has no fear of Sandy the dog. I thought like cats were supposed to be afraid of dogs, but I guess they've lived together too long. And you'll see my hand puts Sandy's food bowl down, and then Dash goes right in for the water bowl in my bonus Dash and Sandy clip, or Dandy clip for the Dandy fans out there, to end the show tonight over here. And so there it is, the Dandy clip. I hope you all enjoyed that. Oh, Lulu Girl gave me a final super chat contribution. Thanks for the peach. It's Pandemic Peach. And you know, I noticed right before I come on start the show, all these people are like betting what color shirt I'm gonna wear. I even saw there was like some weird argument. Do I read the color shirts people guess and then change my shirt at the last minute? No, I mean, usually maybe I have 1, 2, or 3 shirts available that are like clean and not wrinkled. Sometimes I usually try to have at least 2, but I put the shirt on well before I read any of the guesses. So there is no Heisenberg uncertainty principle where your guesses are actually affecting the shirt that I wear. It doesn't happen. I'm answering that question at the end. And anyway, that's the end of the show. I will be back next Sunday and every Sunday for the next 6 months at least, through January 20th, 2021. Hopefully the inauguration of Joe Biden. Who knows what's going to happen between now and then. I'll try to cover it for you with my political commentary and media criticism Maybe I'll have some reason to upload an edited, produced video during the week. Probably not this week because I have a bunch of ACLU stuff to do this week. But whatever, I will be back every Sunday for at least the next 6 months. And until next Sunday or the next time I have some other reason to upload a video, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.